If you've not come from the morning meeting, you're in the wrong place. This is the morning meeting. Dan, Sean, and I are going to tell you what's happening today and talk about it. And we'd love for you to participate, whether you're watching on YouTube or here on the two-way platform. We welcome your participation. As always, blah, blah, blah. Raise your hand, be civil, peace, love, and understanding, blah, blah, blah. All right. Tons today. The storm continues to be the biggest story on cable news. And President Biden basically is cleared his schedule to do this. The vice president has left town. She's in Las Vegas, where she's doing a town hall for Univision. But she'll stay in touch with this story, and I predict you'll see her putting out statements, and there'll be lots of backgrounding about how much she's doing. The Univision town hall tapes at 1 p.m. 4 p.m. Eastern time, and then she flies to Phoenix, and she does an event in Phoenix at 6:30 p.m. Arizona time. Arizona switches. I think they're on Pacific right now, so that'd be 9:30, which means I'm right that it's 9:30 rather than 8:30. Somebody will check for me. She's competing against her Univision Town Hall because that airs at 10 o'clock on Univision. You can go to the Daybook email and get a link to that. Okay, that's what she's doing. We're going to talk to you about polls in a minute. I'm just running through the schedule, but stand by. Okay, Donald Trump today is doing a speech at the Detroit Economic Club at 1 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be on C-SPAN. The Detroit Economic Club, for those of you who don't know, is a fabled venue for presidential campaign candidates to come talk about their economic vision. Should be interesting. How much he stays on prompter, all the normal stuff. However, I want to call your attention to something that's occurring next week, where Donald Trump is speaking to the Chicago Economic Club, which is at noon Eastern time next on the 15th. That's a fabled venue also. But why I'm highlighting this event is because rather than giving a speech, he's being interviewed by John Micklethwait of Bloomberg. John was my boss. He's a brilliant guy. He's a totally serious interviewer. And I don't know how they booked this, but I really would circle that in your calendar. I think that's going to be a fascinating event of Donald Trump being interviewed by a super smart Brit about the economy. So mark your calendar. 7 o'clock tonight in Pittsburgh at the Fitzgerald Fieldhouse, which is also a fabled venue where Michelle Obama and others have spoken. Barack Obama begins his Get Out the Vote tour, convincing people, like he'll mention Trump and people in the audience will boo, and he'll say, "Don't boo, vote." You'll see that tonight, and that's on. You can watch. There's a link to watch that live. As far as we know, the only thing Tim Walz is doing is a LGBTQI plus organizing call at 8 o'clock Eastern time with him and Congressman Garcia and some other folks tonight. J.D. Vance back in North Carolina, where he spends a lot of time, 6 Eastern time, town hall. Doug Imhoff, whose name I've been misspelling lately, thanks to many people to point that out, it'll be fixed tomorrow, is in Georgia again, where he's been spending a lot of time. Now, let's talk about what's out there. Besides, more on the storm, you have polls, okay? Emerson, 101, please. Emerson polled the battleground states. And as you can see, compared to the notion of a tie, these are all margin of error, every one of them. But these are a little bit better from Trump than some of the public polls. You can look at it, again, it's all margin of error. Now, the thing we're going to talk about first, and again, if you want to be in the conversation, please raise your electronic hand if you're here on the two-way platform, is what's going on with the race in terms of the data. The public data, as we've been saying here, and I've been saying at 6 o'clock for a while, on both the Democratic side and the Republican side, is better for Trump than the private data is better than the public data. And what you have now is the Harris campaign facing an excruciating choice about what to say to reporters and their donors and the other Democrats. Is she stalled? That they're saying. The Harris campaign is telling reporters, we're stalled. And even though we have all this money and even though we have great vibes, we're stalled. Are they stalled and behind, or are they stalled and even? If they're stalled and even, then it's a jump ball. They just need to unstall. If they're stalled and behind, that's a bigger problem. Let's look at this, please. 103. Axios today wrote along the lines of what we've been saying here, but with a little bit more spin from the Democratic side. Top Democratic politicians and operatives tell us the vital states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania are getting tougher for Vice President Harris and the party's Senate candidates. There's growing worry among Democrats that Harris seems stuck, even sliding a bit after a strong start. Media blitz, heavy spending, favorable coverage don't seem to be moving the needle much, if at all, these Democrats say. One more quote I want to show you from the Hill. Mick Mulvaney, Republican, was working the Trump administration in Congress. Brilliant guy, really understands politics. I think Trump is going to win because many Democrats are talking like they are going to lose. And while every campaign engages in some sort of expectations management, the Democrats have been oddly specific in their pearl clutching this cycle. He's largely referring to their beginning to raise the Electoral College and saying how unfair that is. So I'm hearing, as Dan is, maybe Sean is, maybe some of you are, from a lot of prominent Democrats saying, we're really worried. Now, are they really worried because she's stalled and tied, or are they worried because she stalled and behind? So the question for Dan and Sean after that giant buildup is, but all that took only 5 minutes. Questions. Oh, let me throw in one more thing really quick. 105, please. Just consumer price index came out. We have 105, maybe not. The latest inflation numbers were good for the Democrats. We don't need the graphic. No, it's all right. We don't need it because we want to move to the main topic. But good news for Democrats on inflation and for the country. The Harris campaign is acknowledging there's a problem. We're stalled. Is it in their interest to say we're stalled and behind, or is saying they're behind create a narrative of, like there's a big problem, not where the underdogs give us money, volunteer, work really hard every day, get to the polls, but rather we may be in a dire place rather than just competitive place. So, Dan, are they admitting they're stalled? Do they need to not let people know they're behind, or does it matter?
No, I think they're stalled, they're behind, but it's very, very close. I mean, you're not down 5, 10 points in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. You're down 2, 3 points. I mean, you were up 2 or 3 points. You'd always rather be up than behind. And so I think the two things can both be true. And I think whether or not they're going to come out and publicly say it or not, I know they're trying to, argue with people that, hey, we are tied, like no panic. Remember, Democrats do the circular firing squad better than anybody else. David Plouffe used to call them the bedwetters. Like every cycle, Democrats go through this. And, to my fellow Democrats, I would just say, look, there's a lot of people on the campaign who were involved in the 2022 midterms, right? Everyone was talking at this time about the building red wave. Democrats were going to get wiped out. I'm not saying history is going to repeat itself and that, Democrats are going to pull this thing out. But there is calm, but they know time is of the essence and they need to reverse this momentum.
Yeah, Mark, quick. First, let me just start with a PSA. I got a really great email last night from one of the folks that joins us every day, just asking, when we refer to public polls versus internal, what do we mean and why? So just, again, to reset real thing, the public polls sometimes, or let me start with the other ones. Internal polls cost more because people are making actual decisions. So the Harris campaign and the Trump campaign will pay more for an internal poll because they need to know precisely who a likely voter is. So we talk a lot about this. Yeah.
So, sorry, just to be clear, it is the campaigns. It's also the PACs.
Oh, right.
Also the party committees. They do the same kind of high quality work.
Right.
And there's some rich people in America, both Republicans and Democrats, who spend their own money hiring really great pollsters to do battleground state polls because they want to know. And that's when we say internals, we're talking about that entire universe. And as Sean said, Sean, I'll throw it back to you. Those polls are better because they're better funded and they're focused on information that's actionable. Sean.
So, and again, I'm not going to spend any time. I just want to make sure everyone understands this because we do throw around a lot of terms sometimes. And I think the beauty of this platform is that we're trying to inform folks. When you do a poll, say it's 1,000 people in so that would put plus or minus at about 3, right? The margin of error. To get a likely voter, you might have to call 15 people that will stay on the phone for 15 minutes. To get a registered voter, you might have to call 2. So the public polls, the media polls are cheaper. They don't need to have the same degree of fidelity because they're not using them for the same purposes. So I say that because it's not that anyone's trying to cheat the system. It's just that internal folks, if you're making a decision about what ads to place, where to place them, what message to run, you're going to pay 2x, 3x as much for an ad that gets a likely voter versus a registered voter or an adult, whatever. So I appreciated the question last night.
And just to be clear, campaigns are weird beasts. They're going out of business in November. They're done. They can spend all their money. They're not a media organization or a university who has dealt with cutbacks Both these campaigns spend what they need to spend to find the best method of finding likely voters and to understand what they're actually thinking. It's just not true of the media polls or the academic poll.
So Pete, I see in the chat, you're asking the cost difference, and that depends, right? So the pollster will say, well, gosh, if you want to do 500 versus 1,000, so that's about a 5% margin of error versus a 2.5 margin of error. And a likely voter versus a register, it might be 3 times as much. So you might be 5,000 versus 30,000, but a big poll,
and let's
a lot of money.
And let's add another variable to it, which is the analytics, right? They're getting data from door knocking and from other information that they use to make these decisions and to inform their view of where the race stands in the 7 states. The media polls and the academic polls have nothing like that.
Right. So it just goes to, I mean,
polling.
the bottom line is it goes down to the quality. It's like anything else. You pay for what you get. The more data you want, the higher the fidelity that you want, you're going to have to pay a lot more. And again, the media folks aren't making decisions on this. If the Washington Post does a poll and it shows Trump 1 or 2 points off, well, no, who cares, right? They're not basing their marketing decisions off that. If Trump is off by 1 or 2 points, he loses. So they're willing to pay a lot more into Mark's point. So that's the first PSA point. Second, I would just say this. You know, we talked yesterday or the day before a little bit about where this is. Jamal Simmons, the former Kamala Harris spokesperson, is in that Axios piece. I think it was the Axios piece this morning or one of the others talking about this problem. They're having a problem with black men. So it's not, this is a real out in the open problem that they're having, that they're willing to talk about. So to answer your question, Mark, in the final days of a campaign, here we sit 26 days, you want to be riding the wave into shore, not on shore, holding the wave back. And right now, so it's not a stall or not. They're now on the backs on the beach trying to hold the Trump wave, right? The trend, it's not one poll that came out. If you look at Michigan, you look at Wisconsin, you look at Pennsylvania, Harris had been up 4 or 5 weeks ago consistently 1, 2, 3 points. Then it went to ties. And now it's slowly Trump, right? That's a trend. And the trend, the wave is moving towards Trump away from her. So you want to be you want to have the momentum crashing in the right amount of time in the final days of the campaign. And that's what Trump has going for him.
Right. And so what you'll hear from Democrats, whether they're spinning or not, is 4 things. 1 is abortion as a motivator. 2 is the superior turnout operation of the Harris campaign, whose chair is a person who came up in politics as a field person. 3, that is the ceiling on Trump's support, that in the end there's a ceiling and they'll burst through it. And lastly, their incredulity that Donald Trump can win. Those are the 4 things that they'll cite. And I'll tell you again, we're here to analyze. Sean has a favorite candidate. Dan does. I don't. I'm for America. And I will tell you, the Trump people are relaxed, confident. They like their hand. They're not spinning me when they tell me what their polls show, because what their poll shows match with, by the way, other private polls, including ones from Democrats. The Democrats are spinning to the extent that they're saying it's tied. We're stalled, but it's tied, and we've got a plan to come back. So this morning, Charles Blow says in his New York Times column, I rarely read it, but I read it today because of the headline, the vibes aren't going to cut it. She needs to start interacting with voters and doing town halls and interactions with voters, which is exactly what they said about Joe Biden when his campaign was on the ropes. He didn't do it. Is there a conclusion to draw, Dan? What is the conclusion to draw that she will almost certainly ignore Charles Blow? Is it that it's too risky, or is it that doing town halls at this phase is kind of stupid, or something else?
Yeah, you've got to go from playing prevent defense to going on offense. You know, to use a football analogy, if you're up, you run the ball, you try not to turn it over, and you just milk the clock down. And we talked about earlier this week, those first few interviews is what it felt like. She was stiff, she was cold, she was really trying not to say anything that would make news. Now you need to force turnovers and go put points on the board. And to your point, Mark, she is going to have to get out there. Simply flooding the zone with television advertisements, I don't think is going to do it. And, you know, there's 2 candidates recently that offer, you know, examples. One was Al Gore in 2000, who kind of found himself behind at this point, you know, and just kind of threw everything out, went with the, you know, people versus the powerful. We can argue if that was a good message or not, but he had passion. He leaned into it and he went hard and he closed and almost pulled it out. 2016, right? I mean, Sean, you can speak to this. Trump zeroed in on Drain the Swamp and really kind of closed hard. He found his groove. She has got to get out there and show like passion, energy. Like if you watch,
And I would add, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I would add focus too.
yeah,
right?
oh, absolutely.
What's the closing message? Because right now, if you look at the negative ads against Trump, there's 20 topics.
Yeah, no, she's got to pick some stuff. And I said this yesterday, Mark. I thought at the end of those interviews the other day, she started to relax and like lean forward in her chair on some subjects and talk like a human being. She has got to do that and get out there. Even if it's in a rally, don't read the teleprompter and just say we're not going backwards. Like, what is going to animate you every day to get up? Why do you want this job? Other than I hate him, because that's not.
Yeah, Sean.
I find it interesting, though, that after initially when Harris became the nominee, they threw out the playbook about democracy being under attack. And now they're slowly creeping back to it, which is he's an existential. I mean, it's sort of like they were like, we know better than Biden. We're going to go after him and all this other stuff. And then they were like, hey, what was that play that you ran before? Because, to use Dan's analogy, it was like, maybe we'll try the wishbone this time. And I think that's true. At some point, if I were her folks, I'd say, listen, Madam Vice President, you've done a great job. We've watched you do this. Let's just let you do it. And just, you have to at some point be willing to just say, screw it, let's try it. Because, and I would start putting her out in town halls and just saying, you be you, stop worrying about everything else. And that would be my unsolicited advice, is just go do it and say, stop it. Stop worrying about trying to script yourself. Be the person that you can be. Because what you can watch her head every time go through these machinations, and it's like, okay.
One big difference is, Mark, is Joe Biden physically could not do this, right? I mean, both from a stamina standpoint and a cognitive standpoint, he could not, and frankly still cannot do this. She can do this, right? It is when she relaxes. I said this yesterday. When she had to go on television after Joe Biden flubbed that debate, she was excellent. Like, it was one of the best interviews she gave. She can do it. To Sean's point, you just got to get out of your head and go get it. Go win this.
Right. All right. Let me run through just the three things really quick, and then we go to your questions. Number one, town hall, right? She's doing this town hall tonight. I've worked on network town halls. Who's the audience? Who's in that audience? Who are they filling it with? Are they filling it with people who are undecided, people who are pro-Harris? And who gets called on? How many of the questions come from the moderator versus the citizens? And are the citizens' questions screened? Because if the citizens' questions are screened, if they're saying, write on index cards in advance what you want to ask, and you're bound to ask that question, it's not really a town hall, because then the producers are basically deciding what the questions are from a universe of whatever. So watch that tonight in the town hall. And then when Trump does his next week, watch that. Two, there's this controversy over CBS. 60 Minutes edits interviews. That's what they do. Okay. Now, did they edit the interview? This is big on the right. Did they edit Kamala Harris's interview to make her look better? There's no doubt that the answer that they edited in was a more coherent answer than the one that she did live. But that's what they do. Now, did CBS want to help her? I would say on balance, Whitaker did the toughest interview she's done. So Whitaker at least was not trying to make this easy for her. Did the producers override Whitaker's impulse and make it better for her? They did. But I don't know that the motivation was to help her. I think the motivation was to make it more coherent. Sean.
Look, it's not that's you just talked about the nuances of a town hall. It's not an interview if you can say something and then go back.
Sean, they do
that,
right, but they do that. That's what 60 Minutes does. It's a question of motive. The overall
I get
interview.
it, but here's
if they wanted to help her, it wouldn't have been as tough an interview. It's one edit.
Okay.
Well, you know me. I'm one to call that liberal media bias.
Yeah.
This is
Here's what I would just say.
Look, this is an edit.
I've never seen a clip motivate the right like this 60 Minutes thing. If you're watching right now and you're wondering, I tweeted it out. I put it on Instagram. I'm shouting it from the rooftop. So any social media, you can go find it. But I'm telling you, I mean, Trump posted it. Don Jr. posted it. Everyone on the right, Hannity last night.
Of course they did.
But no, fine. But I've never seen a clip get that kind of universal agreement among everybody about the outrage. So look,
yes, because they didn't want to acknowledge that CBS did a tough interview.
No,
I understand why they're using it, but I'm just saying on the merits, this one just doesn't make any sense to me. All right, last thing, hold on. Update on the president's schedule. He's going to do another thing on the hurricane. All right.
By the way, I will say this to your point. If the town hall goes well tonight, I think she's
Yeah.
going to suddenly say,
She might.
all right,
I
let's
agree.
go.
I
Let's-
agree.
let's-
I agree. Although again, if it's pre-screened easy questions, then it's creating a false impression, because taking easy questions in a town hall, I don't think is what Charles Blow has in mind. All right.
Yeah, but you
show
know
the
what? I
last
think
thing.
that process is lost on most voters. I mean, just respectfully, I don't think
Well-
the average voter, and where she's gotten tripped up has been on questions are coming. So,
Yes,
step
but-
one,
but-
walk and then
but
run.
She's given bad answers to questions she suspected, but she's also given evasive answers. And on this platform,
Absolutely.
I'm sick of her being evasive. All right.
Yeah, agreed.
102. Just people constantly are asking us to talk about the Senate races in the House. And I talked about it last night at 6:00. I don't know that there's much to say if people want definitive answers. New York Times polled 3 Senate races. Okay. And you can see the Republicans are ahead in all of them. If Scott or Cruz lost, I wouldn't be stunned. I'd be surprised, but I wouldn't be stunned. Nebraska continues to be, if you're looking for a Democratic pickup, Nebraska, based on everything I'm hearing, is more likely than either Florida or Texas. But again, as we talked about at the top, you can take the graphic down. The Democrats are hurting now in all the seats they're defending. They're hurting in Michigan, hurting in Wisconsin, hurting in Pennsylvania, maybe hurting in Maryland, hurting in Nevada,
Ohio. Yeah.
definitely Ohio and Montana. So my point is, you could see Republicans lose 1 or 2. I doubt they'll lose all 3 of their seats they're playing defense on, but they still may keep the majority. All right, go to your questions. Thank you everybody for joining. If you want to get in the conversation, please raise your hand. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, when you start out, please tell us where you are, who you're supporting, and of course, what's on your mind. Welcome in, Ann Dolan. Tell folks who don't know where you are, who you're supporting, what's on your mind, please. Oh, Ann disappeared. And she's back. You need to unmute, Ann. Can you unmute?
Yeah.
There you go.
Hi. Okay. Hi. Yes. I'm from the battleground state of Illinois, but
Mhm.
so I'm supporting Harris, and the only thing I'm gonna say is, Trump backed out of the 60 Minutes interview. Why nobody really talks about that? I think that's not great, and I think the fact that Harris is doing more interviews is a good thing. So
Ann,
that
how
was
do you
just
think
my
she's doing?
only comment.
Okay. Ann, how do you think she's doing in the interviews?
I think she's doing pretty well. I think the one question that she messed up on obviously was the view was not a good answer. But I think then she tried to correct herself. But I think she's doing pretty well. I mean, as opposed to like Trump. I mean, most of his interviews are friendly interviews with Fox and everything. So
It's an absolutely fair criticism. There's a great piece in the New York Times today that says Harris is being evasive in her interviews. And then there's 3 paragraphs that I think are outstanding that say all the things, and very much along the lines of what you said. He's doing friendly interviews for the most part. He's doing John Micklethwait next week. I'd love to see Kamala Harris do that one too. And he's being evasive, and he's lying, and he's changing the subject, to his ground, and he's saying these nonsensical things. All true. And Ann, all I would say is the polls are quite clear on this, and the anecdotal is quite clear too. She's got to show people what she's about. People know what Donald Trump's about. So skipping 60 Minutes doesn't really cost him anything. Is it bad pool? It is, but that's the way it goes. He can afford not to do it. And that's true for at least one reason. As said, people don't know her as well. And it's also true if Trump's ahead, right? If he's ahead, it'd be malpractice for him to agree to things that could cost him the lead. Dan or Sean, would you like to ask Ann a question or comment on what Ann asked about?
And what? I'm sorry, Sean.
No, I was deferring to you. It's being very polite.
What would you like to see Harris do more of here? How do you think she can help persuade the undecided?
I think the town hall is a good idea. Probably just doing more battleground state like with local media would be good. Maybe even trying to coax or I know it's probably not going to happen, but try to coax Trump into doing another debate, maybe by calling him a chicken for not doing it. So
Yeah. Yeah, they tried that. It's interesting to me. She did one Pittsburgh local, she did one Philadelphia. I think she maybe did one or two others, but she's not doing like a satellite tour where she does like a lot, which they sort of suggested she would do. Sean, question or comment before we let Ann go?
No, I think, I mean, for what it's worth, I think this is kind of all of this is because of the uniqueness of this race. I mean, Trump's done a million interviews. No one's wondering what his positions are. I think there's very few people who don't have a position on Donald Trump. I will say this. I think I'm glad he didn't do 60 minutes. I do think that they lied about the Russian laptop. I mean, the Hunter laptop about Russia. I'm glad he didn't do it. I'm tired of our side caving to these guys and subsequently seeing what they've done to her interview. So I'm glad he didn't. That being said, I will say one thing that's interesting that I just want to flag before I forget is considering the beginning part of the conversation that we had about where this race stands, to see Trump going to New York and California to do rallies in the last 26 days is mind-boggling. It's I mean, to pick up on Dan's sports metaphor, it's sort of like, we're just going to put in the second string in the fourth quarter and we're up by a touchdown. It's, why are you going to California? And I mean, I get to raise money. We've talked about this before, but
to raise money, it's to help down ballot candidates. And it's also to do national events that he knows will get a lot of coverage. So I don't find it that inexplicable. And who do you think is going to win? And how'd you find out about two-way?
okay, well, I'm hoping Harris wins. I'm thinking because of the choice issue. I think that's huge. It's a lot bigger than I think people are accounting for. So like I said, it's going to be close, but but you support your candidates. You got to just really work hard for it. That's all.
How'd you find out about two-way?
Oh, YouTube and basically. So
okay,
yeah.
All right, and thank you. Come back regularly. Enjoyed having you here. All right, we heard from a Harris supporter. Let's hear from a Trump supporter. Returning guest, Ms. Graham. Ms. Graham, we really enjoyed having you on the other day, and people, whether they were Trump supporters like you or Harris supporters, I think people found what you had to say quite compelling. So welcome back. You live in New York. Not Eleanor. That's true. Eleanor was not as big a fan. I'd love to hear if you've gotten any reaction to what you said, but also whatever else is on your mind.
I tried feverishly because I wasn't registered for the evening meeting. I tried feverishly to register enough time, but unfortunately I didn't. But I took a myriad of notes to address it. But it's, that's water under the bridge. I will say Eleanor basically supported everything I was saying. When she said, after you showed the clips and after you explained things, when she came back with she's going to get 90% of the Black vote, and she hasn't even cracked 80%. This is a tone-deaf position this goes back to what I said about the arrogance of the Democratic Party towards, a captured vote with the Black vote. And some of this is I'm going to lay at Black people's feet for just arbitrarily just voting Democrat no matter what. But again, this is water under the bridge.
Let me hold on one second, just to catch people up. Laura was on the morning meeting a couple of days ago. She spoke very eloquently, passionately about why she's voting for Trump and her problems with the Democratic Party. That night, Eleanor Clift was on Two-Way Tonight. We showed a clip from the morning, and Eleanor commented. And unfortunately, you were not able to get on to engage live with Eleanor. Continuing with the presumption of grace and peace, love, and understanding. Go ahead. What else would you like to say today? And one more thing. Warn our affiliates. We're going to run a little bit over. Go ahead.
I just wanted to put a pin in something. A couple of weeks back during the afternoon or evening shows, Eleanor toted one of Kamala Harris's accomplishment was locking up truant mothers. That is so tone deaf to me. Wow.
I missed that. We'll have to review the tape.
You please do.
Okay.
But when I think this push to get Kamala to do all of this at the last minute with weeks to vote could very well backfire on her. And even though the media has treated her like the darling, the liberal media too has all media has a habit of eating their own. Is it possible that they may turn on her a little bit if they smell blood in the water? Because her 60-minute interview, I know Sean thinks it was cupcake, but it was tougher than all the rest.
Yeah.
You could literally see
Yeah.
she was getting annoyed with the interviewer.
I will answer your question as someone who's covered every presidential campaign since 1988. I will tell you that a danger for a Democrat, Al Gore in 2000, Hillary Clinton in 2016, the danger is if at the end it looks like you're losing, the media does turn on you.
And that's what I observed.
And that's why I think they're spinning so hard to say we're stalled but even, because if it starts to be we're stalled and behind, that's why some of them have taken some shots at me because I'm reporting what the truth is. And,
I noticed.
and it would take a lot, but here's what that's going to be. It's going to be first. It's going to be blame Joe Biden. It's Joe Biden's fault for deciding to run and giving her only 90 days. He should have gotten out 2 years ago. So that'll be one piece of it. Another piece of it will be she should have taken more risks. She shouldn't have spent the first few weeks. And I'll say the other thing is, and I get lots of emails about this, her schedule is light. I don't know what she's doing in these private meetings, but there's so many days, like she's not doing 3 rallies a day most days. Most days she's like starting stuff. Now she's having meetings, whatever, but that's what the press will say. The press will say she basically kept the same schedule Biden did when she's supposed to be the young candidate who can do more. I want to get a couple other people in, but go ahead.
I feel like a debate. My name was checked.
Yeah.
I'd like
Yes.
I just want to be clear, just so and I said this previously. So I think Bill Whitaker conducted one of the best interviews that I've seen, regardless of party. He asked great questions.
He did.
The way in which he asked them, I think, was fantastic. So my issue isn't with Bill Whitaker, and again, I give him a ton of praise for how he did the subjects he covered, the follow-up, the receipts that he brought. I believe it's the editing that they did to make her answers look not as bad as they were. So that's not on him. He did a great job.
It is on him. He's the correspondent. It is on him, but they didn't do it to make her look good. I'll say again.
But
she
can't win.
You
The
could
one thing I
clearly
would
see
add to
that
your
she
point-
she felt tested. You could clearly see she felt tested, and I feel like if they just push her out to do all of what Dan said, which she should do, with a person who's clearly not comfortable with doing this, even with questions that she should be readily prepared to answer, could this be could this be a backfire move?
Well, it's like, do you
I know you got to try.
I was just going to say, I mean, do you lose doing what you're doing, or do you, try to win the game? I think the one other point, Mark, that I would add to yours about the circular firing squad that's going to be key to watch, and you're starting to see a little bit of it now. All politics is local. There are a lot of senators and House members that if this momentum continues and that 2 to 3 point deficit becomes 5 to 6, we'll have to consider, do I cut her loose, turn on her? And do you start hearing some members say we need a check on Trump?
Correct. And Chuck Schumer will be in that party if necessary. Remember, they did not want Kamala Harris to be the nominee.
Well,
Right.
It's
Chuck
not
Schumer
just
didn't
Chuck
want her.
Schumer,
Nancy
but Nancy
Nancy Pelosi
didn't
Yes,
want her.
she is.
And you know who else didn't want her? Joe Biden didn't want her.
Exactly.
And right now, and this is crazy for Democrats, but just true. It's just true. There's not a lot of carping amongst Republicans about Donald Trump being the nominee and how he's doing.
This is the Dole campaign. This is Dole 96. They're going to pop smoke and be like, "Hey guys, we're out. We got to save ourselves." But
I gotta stop you. It's not Dole 96 because she can still win. Dole
I was
has
just
no
going to say,
chance.
she's in the
She can
game
still win.
today.
Yeah,
all right.
she can still win.
Maybe we got 26 days. Who knows?
She's
Who
only
knows?
down 2 points.
But I will say this. On the media front, the difference is the media is never going to come over to Trump and say, okay, this is like, they will blame everybody. And it's never because Trump did anything right. It's here's everything she did wrong. Here's all the blame that we're going to assign. And that's
the day they might come over to him is the day of the Madison Square Garden event. Watch that thing. Just watch it. All right. Flori, stay right there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to pronounce your name correctly. Romina? I'm going with Romina. Welcome in. Tell everybody who doesn't know where you are, who you're supporting, what's on your mind.
Sorry for my accent. I'm a Latina.
That's okay. We love your accent already.
I'm from Miami.
Where are you? Yeah.
I'm in
And who
Marietta,
do you-
Georgia.
Okay. In Georgia.
My first time
Because-
voting.
Yeah.
I'm going to vote for Harris. I'm coming from a country that is being destroyed, but the same, and this is so emotional for me.
Take your
The
time.
same thing that I see from Trump, I see it in my country almost 30 years ago. It was in Venezuela. I'm from Venezuela. All my family's here. I remember 1992, 1991, where the Cubans in Miami used to tell my family, he's going to destroy your country. The way that he acted, the way that he talked to people, the way that I remember when he was the president, the way that he talked to an ABC reporter, the way that he talked to the females. It was like, oh my God, this is a deja vu. I saw that in Chavez, and I was 16, maybe 17 years old. And when he became president, I'm like, let's give him a benefit of the doubt. Let's see what he does. Because this is the greatest country. This is America. This cannot happen in this country. And the pandemic hit. I don't think that was his fault. I think he just did wrong with the whole how to approach the pandemic. And whatever. He lost the election, and now here we are. I don't like Harris personally, but I think she is the less of the two evils. I cannot vote in my right conscience. I cannot vote for somebody that divide families, countries. And when he's pressed, I don't want what happened to the border, what's going on in the borders. I want to be closed yesterday. But when he expressed himself about Venezuela and all, they all come here, they all rapists, gangbanger. I have 4 nephews, Marine, Army, Air Force. We are not like that. And he cannot get my vote or some of my family the way that he talks. I would love to vote for Republican because I think I'm more conservative. I don't smoke weed. I don't do wild things. My husband's got to vote for Trump, but I just can't. He's not from Venezuela.
Romina,
So-
let me ask you. Thank you for all of that. I just want to get your story, some of the facts of your story. You were born in Venezuela, and you came
Yes.
here when you came here when you were how old?
The first time when I was 13, because my grandmother is Italian. So when she was in Venezuela and she saw what's going on with Chavez, she told my dad, you got to take the family out of this country because he's a communist, he's a dictator, he's this. And it was 19, the first time that he did it was in 1989 when he tried to take the government.
Right. And
So for me, the
Yeah.
line was January 6th because
did you
I
be-
saw that in my
Yep.
country.
how did you become a citizen?
I became a citizen 2021. Finally,
By
after
taking-
20 years being a resident.
Okay.
Congratulations.
And you live in Miami, but you're in Georgia because of the storm?
No, because everything went too expensive in Miami. Everything went crazy. I have a good job, but the housing thing was crazy. An apartment to rent, it was like $2,200 for maybe $2,700. So we have a little boy, and we like, let's go to Georgia, let's go to Marietta. I have a good job, and it's more family oriented than living in Miami Beach.
Yeah. So you're a Georgia voter.
Yes, and I got to
Yeah.
vote that same day.
But
I'm
your
not going
husband-
to do early vote.
But your husband's going to cancel out your vote. Yeah. All right. I want
He
to ask
is
you one more
his own
question.
person.
Yeah, I understand. I want to ask you one question, and then I'm going to let Sean and Dan ask you a question. When you think about the two candidates on the economy, do you think one of them's better on the economy? And that's trumped for you by Trump's January 6th, et cetera? Or do you think she's better on the economy?
Listen, whoever comes to the presidency, we have to do better by ourselves. I'm making more money now than I was making in 2020 or 2018, 2017. I have more debt because it's my responsibility. That's the fact. I spend, and it's my responsibility. I'm making more money now. So, and what I do care is about the government, like in Georgia, the people that are close to me. Because the president, we all like, they're all this and they're all that. I have to care about who is in Georgia or who is in Florida when
absolutely.
I was down there.
Absolutely. Sean.
I first of all, I'm glad you are out of Venezuela and your country
Me too.
here, and I'm glad that you are a citizen and did that the right way. I respectfully disagree with your take on President Trump. I'm glad that you at least see the light on policy issues and that hopefully you'll vote Republican on the rest of it. But the platform doesn't allow for the time to make the case why I actually would argue that if you're concerned about the policies of Venezuela and what Chavez did, Kamala Harris poses to me a massive threat, both economically, militarily, and every other way, to take away the very freedoms that you so cherish now. I wish we could have more time. Yeah. Maybe in the future we can.
Yeah. Okay. Dan, do you want to ask or say anything?
Just thank you for coming on and sharing your story.
Yeah. How old is your boy?
I have a 23-year-old daughter. She don't want to vote. And I have an 8-year-old.
8-year-old?
So, yes, it's a boy.
Yeah.
Why doesn't the 23-year-old want to vote?
Just one of those, I guess. She don't care about anything right now.
What does your 8-year-old like to do in his free time?
Oh my God, he's a sport man. Sports.
Is he like
let me
Atlanta teams?
Say something about
yes, ma'am.
What Mr. Sean say.
Yeah.
I'm not voting for the situation of my country. I can't. I live here. My 2 kids are here. I can do nothing about what's going on in Venezuela. I do understand the President Trump helped more than what Harris and Biden have done. But this is what happened. Back when the whole situation with Maduro was, he said, all the options are on the table. One of the options was doing nothing, and nothing happened. So I'm not voting for what's happening in Venezuela. I'm voting for what is going to happen for my kids in this country. And for what I think.
And I would respectfully, that's the point though. I'm not trying to make it, but my point is you saw the movie. You know what happens, if you go down, right? You go down a path, and that's the problem, is that I think where the Democrats are taking this country is in that direction. That's my view on this. And so you, of all people, have an insight that we as Americans, at some point, hopefully we don't get there. But you, based on your experience, I think have seen what happens if you go down a very dangerous policy path. And so I actually, I get you're not voting because of it, but I think that
for him.
Yeah.
I will vote Republican, but I cannot vote for Trump for what he is.
Why don't you just vote for JD Vance then?
No.
Yeah. All right. We're so glad that you came on. I know I'm speaking for Sean and Dan, but also lots of people who are watching. So glad you came on and shared that. We hope you'll come back regularly.
Thank you.
Tell us what you're seeing in Georgia, and we're super glad that you're part of Two Way. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. 3 great talkers. Lots of hands up. Sorry we didn't get to more people, but I thought those 3 were worth an extended time. We'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. I'll be back 6 p.m. tonight. We're working on a bunch of stuff. You can take that down. We're working on a bunch of stuff, and we'll have more to say about it later. But we'll certainly have all the news of the day, and hopefully some reporting, and we'll preview some of the events that are occurring this evening, including Barack Obama's event. Sean, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I know that at one point we're going to get to surrogates, so let's save that for tomorrow or one of these days.
Yeah.
There's a really interesting take. I'm not going to say it today, but this dovetails back to the conversation we were having before about, I think some of the folks on the right have a belief as to why some of the surrogates aren't speaking louder for Kamala. And so I'll put that in the bottle and save it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, tonight she's got the loudest of all surrogates, Barack Obama, don't boo, vote. And so we'll talk about that tomorrow probably, and show some of the clips from his event. Grateful to everybody for joining. Thank you again. We'll see you at 6 p.m. tonight and 9 o'clock a.m. tomorrow. Same bad time, same bad channel. Have a fantastic day.